Alas, you've clicked on this video thinking it would be a She-Ra interpretation, but all along it was me, deal! I love JoJo. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, this is actually a She-Ra analysis of what makes this show freaking amazing. Um, yeah. Okay, anyway, hello, my name's Captain Aryes, and I'm here to analyze what makes She-Ra a really interesting video. Or piece of media, I should say. Not a video, sorry, this is a video. That's a whole series. What makes this interesting is a lot of things, but first of all, before I go into it, first of all, if you have not seen She-Ra all the way up to season 5, get the heck out of here, watch She-Ra, and then come back to my video. Do not come back before you watched all of season 5. I don't care if you need a certain perfect day to, watch it. Don't watch my video then. I'm sorry. I'm going to spoil. And if you're in this video, you're probably wanting to watch She-Ra. You need a sign to watch She-Ra. Here's my sign. Go watch She-Ra. Fucking do it. Don't ask the universe to tell you to go watch She-Ra. Watch it now, because it's good. And I'm literally explaining why it's good. So, there's your sign. Go watch She-Ra. Anyway, for all of us who have watched all the way to season 5, because we were either on that shit like crazy, or one of our friends who was crazy insane in love with cartoons said, hey, She-Ra's some good shit, and one day you were on Netflix bored out of your mind and finally watched it, and then you called her up and said, yeah, this is good shit. This is the video for you. Let's talk about the good shit. So, yeah. Or maybe you're on season 1 and you're not sure whether or not you should continue. Please keep watching. It's good stuff. I already talked about this before, but I've done a She-Ra video about Entrapta and her character analysis. Now, if you've seen that, you know I've also done a paper on She-Ra, which didn't just include Entrapta, but it did mainly, but it also encapsulates partially why I enjoy She-Ra. And in general, Entrapta is just one big part of why I enjoy it as a series. First of all, She-Ra, Princesses of Power on Netflix is an adaptation of She-Ra, the original She-Ra, which, I can't tell you if it's good or not. I've never watched it, so maybe there are people who have watched the original She-Ra and are looking at my video going, she's talking about She-Ra, Princess of Power. Yes, I am. I'm talking about She-Ra, the Princess of Power, and how it is encompassing part of what is now known as some sort of equality cartoon movement, in which we are trying through cartoons instead of through actual media, because actual media costs so much more to deal with, I think, than cartoon. It just takes more time for cartoons. But we're entering this age of diversifying what stories we tell and diversifying a cast of characters and giving them character development. It's a very good thing. It's a wonderful thing. And it's getting more and more powerful with each big show that's hitting and how it's telling its stories. And I think we're cracking into a bigger genre in which people are going to find more interest of all ages into what would be deemed as kid shows. To start off this analysis, I would just like to bring in my favorite character being Entrapta. But I'd also like to bring in different characters throughout this entire thing, where I'm just going to talk about them, gush about them a little bit, and say why I like it. First off, something I noticed when I was watching the show is that, I'm going to take a board here so I can keep in check, is I noticed that they don't genderfy anybody for a particular joke. Now, if you don't know what I mean oftentimes when we watch shows, it'll talk about girls, boys, boys don't do that, girls don't do that. Or they'll make a one-off episode about how girls don't do that and boys don't do that. Now, Steven Universe probably was the first one to kind of do that, but it still had that vibe of, you're a human, you can't do that type of thing. So it had a limit. It had characters that talked about how someone couldn't do something based on their race or gender or whatever it may be. Whereas She-Ra, I think they've eliminated a lot of that in the way that, like, wording-wise it's done. And that's very, very refreshing. I'd never realized how much we genderfied in our cartoons with our episodes or some of our themes than when I watched that. And finally recognized that we haven't said a single joke about it. It's a funny show. But we didn't have to rely on genderfying being the funny part of the joke. Now, if you know what I mean, we aren't using gender as a way to instruct or lead an episode, which is fantastic because they don't even mention gender in most cases, other than when they do pronouns of Bo, he's, or Bo, she, or Glimmer, she's, and such like that. They use pronouns only to respectfully address each other. And it's the same with Double Trouble, which, as we all know and potentially love, Double Trouble is voiced by what's the word I'm looking for? Gender fluid? Is that what I'm looking for? Or perhaps it is. No, non-binary. Non-binary. I was close to getting that wrong. I did not want to get that wrong, because that's very important. Is a non-binary character voicing a non-binary character. Or, sorry, a non-binary person voicing a non-binary character. And while that isn't a huge deal, it is at the same time, because there's just more realism with being able to identify with characters and being able to play them. Of course, that's the same with people who generally have a character that is motivating. They're gonna do better on that character. And Double Trouble delivered the double of the trouble. Double Trouble was a fan favorite. Perfection. Even before, like, the season with them in it cast. Now, Double Trouble is non-binary, and their pronouns are used as they. And that is flippin' important, because I'm trying to think if there's ever been a time other than in Steven Universe where they use they as in two people fused with no defining gender, is that they didn't really use they very much to specifically talk about a single human. And that is important in its own way, is that this made that step very strongly. And that is important. What's important is it doesn't rely on gender to make its jokes, and it doesn't rely on gender to create a connection to characters. It's not utilizing your stereotypes towards characters. It's wonderful in that way that you can still connect with these characters because their character development and personalities are more important than just the way they are or something. It's refreshing is a good word for it. I personally like those shows more. Shows that end up using more equality-based items. In terms of, like, they use more quality-based standards with their shows. This is not making any sense, probably. Another thing I appreciate is body type changes. Now, the original She-Ra, the reason that most of the women were made the way they were in the show, and most of the men made the way they were in the show, was so that they could sell figurines. Let's be real here. They just wanted to sell figurines, change a few colors, and basically sell the same figurine for a cheaper price. And during that time, that was acceptable. That was... it wasn't great, but it was acceptable. And nowadays, we are in this period in which we are force-fed, a lot of women and a lot of people of, even men and non-binary and all sorts of people and humans are being fed what is and isn't allowed for you to feel or allowed for you to look like. And body image is very important nowadays. Body image is, psychologically, it helps in ways that we don't even think about. I call it the pretty effect. I also call it other things. But I call it the effect of your psychology in terms of willing to look towards someone better or talk to them more, or the psychology of socializing in general. I think I did a whole entire reactionary poster on what what the pretty effect is, and if you conglomerate all the prettiest effects of people, how does it affect your psyche? People have done tests on this, on whether or not someone would approach someone who was homeless who looked a little different than someone who was homeless who was pretty, and the difference was immense. Now, body image is huge because the way that we as people are portrayed in the media affects how people think of you. Now, we may not think that way, but it starts very young as well. Is that if we project certain things of people, it creates standards or stereotypes in our minds. Now, that's the same with people who have not met people of color, or people who are ostracized from meeting other types of people who are different sexuality-wise or religion-wise. It creates a non-basic understanding where we only use our TV knowledge or our show knowledge to address them. And if there's a show or an episode that is all about what girls can't do, or what body images are perfection, or all the strong women look a certain way, this creates a flawed look of only a person that looks this way can be strong, or only a person that looks a certain way can be wise or great. You know, the list goes on and on, where we use TV to help us understand the world. Whether or not it's helping us understand the world sometimes can vary depending on what the show is, of course. But it's how we widen our horizons. Widen our horizons in terms of knowledge. It is a way that we learn. It is a way that we are able to connect with something that's moving. And stories help us remember things. That is how myths were created. That was how, or why myths were created, was to create child understandings of what to do and what not to do. And through the breakdown of body types, She-Ra has essentially given us different body types to put with new personality traits that we rarely see in media. Like Glimmer is short hair and very pink and very glittery and sparkly, but she doesn't act like you would expect someone who's short hair, pinkly, sparkly, because there's a stereotype made with that, and she has broken that by being very aggressive, very agitated a lot. And perhaps that might be a wrong for some people. Whatever. Things like Scorpia being a bigger woman, also being a bigger, stronger woman, being a princess, or Bo having his beautiful midriff showing and him being very talented in so many things, and having his parents run historical. There's just a lot of interesting things that this show has to offer in terms of straying from stereotypes on TV, that is done in a way that follows an old storyline, but is different for sure from that storyline. Because I believe it's Noelle Stevenson made a comment. She walked in a room and wanted the gayest thing she could make. So she made She-Ra Princesses of Power with as many colors as you could, working off the base of it and doing what she really wanted to do to the show, which I think we all can agree she did a pretty great job. Because if you can end a show and leave the audience feeling pretty decent about that ending, I feel like you've done a good job. It's just truth. And with the way that we had a lot of LGBT representation, and not just LGBT representation, we had people of color representation. And sure, we didn't have a lot of, perhaps, history involved with the people of color representation, which is a complaint sometimes I see in the community, is that there's not enough people of color in shows that actually show their backgrounds in ways that are more relatable than just a one-off show spin. And I get that, but at the same time, I do have to appreciate how people of color in this show are characters. In general, have character development, are able to be relatable, are able to be different than just one type of person or speaking one type of way. That is important. That is important to see that there are children of all types and there are people of all types in all sorts of colored skin or scaly skin, including for Scorpia, or sometimes people identifying in a way that they didn't think they would with other characters. Yeah, I know this is probably in the way of enjoying me talking to the microphone. Anyway, I'm still just gonna keep it there. I'm really sorry. Maybe I'll move it back a little. Anyway, that is a big thing, is that we're hitting a golden age where this is amazing to see, and so nice to be able to see women who are jacked in shows and cartoon shows, who are huggers, and not always having to be the big strong one, or the one who's always aggressive, or the one who always wants to start a competition. We all know those characters. We've seen them. We see you. We know you're there, but not everyone's like that. And it's important to see that, as well as like people like Entrapta, who are confirmed to be autistic, but people who watch, like, even from the first episode Entrapta was introduced, that was part of her character quirks, were things that people who have been around people who are autistic can identify and immediately start to see themselves in others, which is important to see. She also gets character development, and that is important. We get character development in villains, which is super hella important. I think a big issue with some shows that aren't notified for being really good is that those shows generally don't make the villains have a lot of character development. Think of the shows we think are really great right now. We think Gravity Falls is good. We think that, so we think Gravity Falls is good. We think, I was just saying community-wise, not everybody has to agree with these. Gravity Falls, Avatar: The Last Airbender, which should have been the first one, but yeah, my brain's working weird right now. Teen Titans, regular Teen Titans. The original, not the Go. We all know how the Go is not, is a laughingstock compared to Teen Titans original. I would say Showdown's pretty good. Not everyone knows that. Not everyone knows that show, which is really sad. But we have Gravity Falls. Of course, She-Ra. Owl House right now is really popping. We've got development on Amphibia. I haven't seen a lot of Amphibia, actually, at all, almost. So I can't, like, tell you a lot about that one, but within these shows, within, like, Gravity Falls, there is development of the plot surrounding the villain, surrounding what the villain is, who the villain is. We also have Mau Mau. I forgot about Mau Mau, but Mau Mau's kind of different, good for a different reason, but a lot of people aren't talking about it. Avatar: The Last Airbender. Zuko is the prime fucking reason that I stated this, because Zuko having character development at the same time as Aang, and having mistakes or mess-ups, is so important for people to see. I think a huge reason that we have such issues in media is that we villainize somebody and we never make the villain relatable. We try and make them evil for no purpose, when humans are not evil for no purpose or bad for no purpose. There are people who do bad things for bad reasons. There are people who do bad things for good reasons. There is a clear difference between those two types of people. We all know this. I hope we do know this. But that's what makes She-Ra really powerful, is that we have Catra as a character who does a bad thing, who does multiple bad things. But in the end, she can be forgiven if the prime person who has to forgive her can forgive her. And sometimes they're not going to forgive her. They even talk about that, how they don't think they can forgive her, but they can learn to be tolerant until, or if they ever do forgive her. That is a big deal, is that we need, that's also with Entrapta and Hordak, Hordak developing as a character. It's all about making the characters not just credibly funny or one way or another, or just used for a story, but it's about making a character really a character, a person in written form, and giving voice to that character. It's so hard to make a character personable to everybody or make them interesting. But She-Ra manages to make most characters within the show personable enough that you can like them, you can hate them, you can find them funny, you can find them not funny. They aren't just a means to an end, most of those characters. They just aren't. They are part of the plot. They come again, they go again. And I just really wanted to talk about those three things. Is that She-Ra is amazing at not using gender to prompt an episode, or even using gender as a way to show strength. And that's important to me, because I seeing a bunch of shows that use you can't do this, you can't do that, and then somebody doing it showing that they can, while still a power move, is not a power move when it's overdone or it's done through gender. It's just not, it's not cute. It's not funny. It's overdone. And frankly, it doesn't show power at that point. It just shows this person had to give a reason why they did this. And I think that's important. And we've also got that they don't use weight or stereotyped bodies to stereotype their characters. Also important. Thank you. A scorpion is not always mean. A guy who sets ships on fire and who's a pirate is actually a singing shanty boy who's absolutely in love with a mermaid. Like, when usually they dislike mermaids with a passion or something like that. It's playing off of the stereotypes, but not relying on the stereotypes to play off them. They're doing their own thing. You can feel like they're not just there. They have reason to be there. And lastly, it does some villain character development, which puts more of a universe within reach, and it makes these characters interesting. Even like Shadow Weaver, which people dislike the hell and back. Even when she died, they're like, you don't deserve to be forgiven. And maybe that was the point, is that she died in the way that she did because she knows that. She knows deep down she can never be forgiven for what she's done. Maybe. I'm not here to discuss theories, honestly. I'm just here to discuss why it's a good show, why people need to still watch it, which boggles my mind because, hello, there's so much involved in it, and Noelle Stevenson and all the people who worked on She-Ra, writers, musicians, everything. Thank you so freaking much. You did wonderful. You did good. Thank you. That was all I wanted to say. It's Captain Aryes. Peace out. I'm probably going to do something on Owl House at some point, because where's season 2? I'm ready.